Again, it's my pleasure to welcome you all today. This is going to be a fairly brief program. We aren't going to elaborate much, but we do have several things in mind to make sure this dedication goes well. And first I want to acknowledge some of our special guests that are here today. Let's see, you've already seen Lane Grayson, our county commissioner. And then we also have here our Ennis City Mayor, Cameron Rabin, who's standing back there. Let's see, and then I don't know if we have any other city commissioners. Are there? Oh, good. We probably were trying to avoid a quorum accidentally. Let's see, but I do have the other members that I enjoy serving with on the Ellis County Historical Commission. If you all wouldn't mind standing, I see John Weddle, Bruce Fowler, Sharon Farmer, Elmarine Bell, Logan Treadaway, Karen Carrion, and Cameron Rayburn. That's right. Thank you all for coming. And again, it's a great honor to be part of that organization. We are the county arm of the Texas Historical Commission. And one of the wonderful things that the Texas Historical Commission does is to dedicate plaques like the one we are doing today, markers like the one we are doing today, of places of historical importance here in our state, either that are still here that we can look at and think back on our history, or places such as Sand Lake that are lost somewhat to history. So we're very honored to have that. And so that I don't accidentally take too much away from Sharon, I'm going to bring up Sharon Farmer here, again, a member of our Ellis County Historical Commission, and she is also our marker chair. So she is the wonderful, hardworking lady that makes these markers possible. Sorry about the mic.
Welcome to all of you. Just a little information on why it's significant that we have Texas state markers. It's one of the most visible programs of the Texas Historical Commission. Historical markers commemorate diverse topics in Texas history, from historical buildings to military sites. In addition to events that changed the course of local and state history, and the individuals who made lasting contributions to our state, communities, organizations, and businesses. Most topics marked with subject markers must date back at least 50 years and are meant to be educational in nature, revealing aspects of local history that are important to a community or a region. They are generally placed at sites that have a historical association with that topic. For us, a topic is considered to have historical significance if it had influence, effect, impact on the course of history or cultural development of Ellis County. These markers help us to remember people, places, and events associated with our county's history that may have been forgotten or not known at all, by writing a permanent history of our county and the actual locations where the history took place. As living descendants of early pioneers of Ellis County decrease, and new residents brought to our county by developments in progress increase, it's more and more important that we preserve the history of our county for future generations. Ellis County was formed in 1849, and because travel was difficult in an untamed wilderness, small communities sprang up all across the county to unite people who settled in an area. In the 19th century, these small communities were the heartbeat of the county, providing services and camaraderie for the area residents. As Ellis County progressed, these small communities died out as improved trade, travel, and employment moved country folk to the larger cities of the county. It's the history of these small, thriving communities, such as Sand Lake, that historical markers help us to remember, and the contributions they provided to the development of Ellis County. Historical markers can be found in all 254 counties. The Texas State Historical Marker Program began in 1962 and there have been over 17,000 markers placed across the state. Ellis County has 129 historical markers, including the one at Sand Lake.
Thank you very much, Sharon. And now to move on to that talks about the importance of markers in general, and then also about Sand Lake. And now to speak specifically about the history of Sand Lake, I want to introduce to you Will Glaspy. Oh, hey, it's back. Oh, for now, I think they're applauding for you, not the microphone.
It's working. Thank you, David. So we were having a discussion earlier about coffee. There is coffee in the back. A friend of mine last week said that he didn't need coffee to wake up in the morning. And my response to that was, well, technically you don't need a parachute to skydive, but it is helpful. So the history of Sand Lake actually starts before Texas independence, when in 1835, 150 men, excuse me, from New Orleans, known as the New Orleans Greys, came to Texas to help fight for Texas independence. One of those men, David Buckley, born in 1808, was a young husband and father. He was among them. Many of the Greys, to include Buckley, ended up eventually joining Fannon's garrison at Goliad. And on March 27th, 1836, they, as most people know, all of Fannon's men, to include Buckley, were executed. For Buckley's heroic sacrifice, the Republic of Texas granted his heirs nearly 2,200 acres on the west bank of the Trinity River in what is now Ellis County. In the center of Buckley's survey is a small boot-shaped lake excuse me, that later became known as Sand Lake. In 1871, Buckley's widow sold her land to Alsdorf Faulkner, and by 1872, the Houston and Texas Central Railroad had made it all the way to Ellis County, and the town of Ennis, thank you, had been founded. 10 years later, Faulkner deeded a strip of land 150 feet wide for the laying of railroad tracks. This led to the formation of the Texas Midland Railroad, leaving Garrett and Ennis. You could take the railroad in a northeasterly direction. It would pass right through the middle of Buckley's survey, cross the Trinity River, go to Terrell, Texas, which was housed the offices of the railroad, and eventually end up 5 hours later in Paris, Texas. The availability of rail service over the years proved to be a contributing factor in the growth of the area known as Sand Lake. By 1893, the Texas Midland Railroad was actually placing advertisements in local newspapers that it would stop at Sand Lake for those wanting to take advantage of the excellent hunting and fishing in the river bottomlands. In the 1890s, William Marion Mulliken and one of his sons acquired over 1,500 acres of the Buckley survey just north of the railroad tracks. And in 1912, they sold a small parcel of that land along the Trinity River to the U.S. government for the building of the Lock and Dam number 7. Remnants of that are still visible in the river today. And in 1916, they sold land to the Ellis County Levee District. In 1917, a little over 1,000 acres of land in the Buckley survey passed to the ownership of Homer Newton Chapman, and Sand Lake began to take on more of a village atmosphere. Chapman installed a water system complete with a water tower, which was eventually destroyed by a tornado in the 1980s. There was a railroad switch, a grocery store where tenants could charge their groceries and pay and not pay until the crops came in. There was also a post office in the store. There was a blacksmith shop, an ice house, corrals, pens, a windmill, a stone tank, gasoline shed, some 40 tenant houses, and a cemetery. There were 2 schools, one for white students and one for black students. In 1942, Sand Lake schools merged with the Ennis Independent School District. Church services were occasionally held in the schoolhouses. In 1923, William Chapman was appointed postmaster at Ennis, serving until 1931 when mail was sent to Ennis. I know that there's still some letters that are trying to make that transition from Sand Lake. Electricity would not reach Sand Lake until 1950, and telephone landlines never did. In fact, I remember when my dad got his first cell phone, he actually thought that he made the first telephone call from Sand Lake when he got his first cell phone. Prior to that, communication was by amateur radio. My grandparents had a radio at their house, big antenna out in front of the house, and down at the house at Sand Lake there was another radio, big antenna outside the Sand Lake house, and every night at a certain time my grandfather would reach out to my uncle or vice versa using the unique identifying numbers that the FCC would grant specific to every radio. Plans for State Highway 34 had begun as early as 1917, and by 1923 one could travel on it from Ennis to Kaufman. Originally the road came through here, through Tellico on what was called Red Bank Road, crossing the Trinity and into Peeltown. Around 1945 the state of Texas rerouted the Highway 34, going through its present location on the lower end of Sand Lake. The road was paved and a new truss bridge was built across the river. Sometime after the highway was built, AT&T needed a place to store some of their communication equipment in the area. Once they found out that the area had flooded years before, they decided that they would build their little communication facility up on the highway. In addition to putting it up on the highway, and it's a raised highway, they also put it on stilts. There's pictures of it in the back of the room. To this day, if you look at it, once I tell you this, to this day we still call it the birdhouse because it looks like a giant birdhouse. In 1929, my great-grandfather, Miles Durham Glaspy, made his first purchase of land in the river bottom. 9 years later, he and my grandfather purchased lands that once belonged to the Mullikans and the Chapmans. Over the years, they acquired more land in the river bottom, and Sand Lake eventually became approximately 3,300 acres. Although it began as a cotton farm, with the arrival of machinery, other crops were soon planted. This included wheat, milo or maize, alfalfa, millet, hay, and then much later soybeans. And when I say that we transitioned from, or the land transitioned from cotton to wheat, all of my generation knew that on June 1st every year we were going to be at Sand Lake harvesting the wheat. We all had some role in it, all the boys and even some of the girls. In about 1980, my grandfather had planted 1,600 acres of wheat, and for teenage boys to spend from early morning to late at night, 7 days a week, until the crops were all in, was cruel and unusual punishment. That year we started on June 1st, and my grandfather let us stop on July 3rd and have Independence weekend off, and then we came back and finished the last 2 days or so after the holiday weekend. Cattle also did very well in the river bottom. At its peak, the herd at Sand Lake numbered approximately 550 mother cows. Early herds, as the market kind of dictated, were mostly Herefords, but there always seemed to be other breeds in there, Angus, Charolais, and the occasional Brahma that scared the bejeebies out of us little kids just because they always looked so mean. Later, as the industry changed, the herds became more Black Angus. And of course, with cattle, you can't have cattle without having horses. For my grandfather, horses were a tool to get the work done. So he maintained some nice stallions and a good herd of mares, mostly quarter horses. But as my cousin Joey said, because back in the day there had been a racetrack in Ennis that the family was involved in there back in the day, so there was some thoroughbred mix in there. And then later, my dad and others kind of dabbled in Arabians as well. Probably at its peak, the remuda consisted of about 40 horses. Sand Lake was not a grand southern plantation for many of the families that lived down there over the years. They had subsistence gardens, chickens, hogs, sheep, goats. Wild plums, dewberries, and grapes grew abundantly from the soil. And every winter, somebody would show up willing to pick pecans on the halves. There were giant pecan trees down there, although not so-called pecan groves or commercial operation, but lots of pecan trees. The 1940s were a period of great transition for the community of Sand Lake, with the agriculture business having been worked by humans and mostly mules, and transitioning over to machinery. The census records more accurately reflect the rise and demise of the community of Sand Lake. From 1920 to 1930, there were a little over 100 people that lived there. This increased to 200 by 1940, and then dropped to 48 in 1950. By the early 1960s, there were less than 20 people living there, and was the case in the rest of the United States. These numbers also reflect the decline in the sharecropping system and the rapid growth of the mechanization of the farming industry. Flooding has always been a big problem in the river bottom. There were major floods in 1922, again in 1926, which led to the construction of the new levee. In 1942 and again in 1946, the levee was breached, bottomlands were flooded, and the railroad tracks were washed out, never to be rebuilt. By the early 60s, there was little evidence of the village that once had been Sand Lake. Just a little side note on flooding and all. You don't have to have the levee breach at Sand Lake to get stuck in the mud. And one of the things I learned when I was young was you really can't get stuck in sand if the sand is wet. But that doesn't go for mud. And whether it was my grandfather, my father, my uncle, my cousins, my nephews, it was frustrating at the time for them to get stuck, and you walk back to headquarters and get a tractor or another truck to come pull them out, only to watch them drive right back into the same mud hole and get stuck all over again. Now, I never blame Sand Lake for this. This is a DNA trait that we have in our family. And is the other thing that changed in down there over the years was the abundant wildlife and hunting that had been advertised by the railroad in the late 1800s. However, construction in growing up, there were no the wildlife and the deer. There was none of that here at the time. But the construction of the Richland Chambers Reservoir in Navarro County in the mid-1980s and the Trinity River flood in the 90s brought about a significant change to to the environment and to the wildlife. Deer and the dreadful feral hogs are plentiful now, unless you're a hunter or not a very good shot, and then you would say that the deer are not plentiful, but the hogs are. And even alligators have made a rare appearance down there. In 1980, Gifford Hill, a prominent sand and gravel company at the time, drilled and found large deposits of gravel in the river bottoms to include at Sand Lake. They made my grandfather an offer he couldn't refuse. So he sold them 1,500 acres at the time. And during the last 3+ decades, mining of sand and gravel in the Trinity river bottoms has become probably as big a business as cotton was 100 years before. Sand Lake has always been there to provide for what was needed. Excuse me. That may have been the means for a better life for a widow and her children, a place for recreational hunting and fishing over the years, a farm to grow cotton when Ellis County was King Cotton County, a place to raise cattle, to provide beef for a nation, or the source for sand and gravel for a growing infrastructure in the area. And in the future, who knows? It's very likely that Sand Lake will be part of a reservoir to provide water to the growing Metroplex area. And if so, it would only be fitting that the reservoir be Sand Lake. So, thank you.
All right. Well, next up is a brief message from David Gravel, and he's on the board of the Texas Historical Commission, and he is our commissioner in the Dallas area. So, David, if you'd come up. Oh, there you are.
Right here. Thank you, David.
You want me to try again?
It's all right.
Yeah.
My name's David Gravel. I am one of the 15 commissioners of the Texas Historical Commission. We're appointed most often by the governor. I've been on the commission for almost 20 years now. They keep reappointing me. I have no idea why. You would think they would learn, but they don't. I bring you greetings from those commissioners. Those commissioners are from all across the state, and our chairman, John Now, who is from Houston. So it's a great pleasure for me to be here in Ellis County for a couple of reasons. And one is, I grew up in Corsicana and graduated from Corsicana High School. So I'm a son of the Blackland Prairie. Sharon noted that there are over 17,000 markers, and we always say there's between 16,000 and 17,000 because some people use them as targets. And a lot of them get shot and run over and stuff like that, and we have to go back, and we're never really sure on a specific day how many we've got, but we know it's over 16,000 and almost 17,000. They mark, as Sharon noted, everything from pioneers, battles, industries. We did one for the cotton industry here in Ellis County. Just buildings, I mean, you name it, there's, and then we'll be doing one in April for the bluebonnets here in Ellis County, which are very famous. The agency itself was founded in 1953, and it was generally just to mark historic sites. But we gained more responsibilities. I guess we must have done it right, I suppose. And we became the Texas Historical Commission. The program I'm going to tell you about, to me, it's not as important as the markers, but it's damned important. And that would be our historic courthouse preservation program. There are a number of courthouses that we have restored in this in this area. One would be the Ellis County Courthouse in Waxahachie, which is a magnificent building. I actually got to go to the dedication of that, and it's a spectacular building. There's also a restored courthouse in Navarre County in Corsicana. And I was actually in that courthouse as a teenager for reasons I can't discuss. But there are two here, and if you want to brave the traffic and go to Dallas, there's one up there called Old Red, which is a really tough one because it's made out of sandstone. So it degrades all the time. Every time there's somebody coughs, part of the building falls off, basically. And there will be one built, one restored in Freestone County in Fairfield. It's in progress right now. We also manage 40 historic sites, which was our original mission across the state. And they're everywhere from San Jacinto to the Eisenhower birthplace in Denison. If you hadn't been to that one, it's a little jewel. It's worth the trip to go. Sam Rayburn's house in Bonham, and the Port Isabel Lighthouse on South Padre, which has been completely redone. We restored the mirror and everything, so it works. Two newer ones are the Bush Home in Midland, which is also a fabulous portrait of growing up in the 50s, basically, what a house looked like back then. And an exciting one that we're getting ready to do is the Iwo Jima Memorial in Harlingen, which is there at the Marine Military Academy. And it's impressive because it is from the same cast that the one in Washington is from. So it's identical to it. And it's there, and we're going to put a marine museum there and a visitor center. And it's fantastic. It's quite a portfolio of all the great sites in Texas. Marker dedications are important to me for a slightly different reason, and that is when, they say you die twice. One is when you die, and the second one is when nobody says your name out loud. Well, a marker says your name out loud. And so that's what we're doing today, is we are saying these important people name out loud. And one of those is Daniel Buckley, who was a soldier and was part of the Goliad, what's called the Goliad Massacre. A lot of people don't know much about Goliad because it's, first of all, it didn't have Davy Crockett, and it didn't have Walt Disney, and it's not in a major metropolitan area like the Alamo is. But there were over twice as many Texans massacred at Goliad as there were at the Alamo. There were 420 brave Texans who were marched out on a Palm Sunday, if you can imagine that. The irony of that, they were marched out two different directions from the Presidio, which is in the town of Goliad, basically. And they were massacred. The Mexican soldiers just turned on them and shot them, killed them in all different kinds of ways. And including the commander, James Walker Fannin. The crowning indignity of that particular event was they weren't even given Christian burials. They were just left on the ground. Unlike the Alamo, where at least they were burned on a funeral pyre, the bodies of the killed Texans were left on the ground, and the Texan army came back and buried them in a common grave, which you can see as a part of the property. So we're really here to honor a couple of things, and one is this town that Will so articulately talked about. And it, like many towns, like Old Bardwell, when the railroad went away, Sand Lake went away too. But you can see all of that on the marker. You can see the citizens, you can see the landowners. We're here to dedicate, I believe, two things. One are the citizens and the brave Texans who tried to make a go of it here and really have, in a way, contributed to the growth of Ellis County, but also a hero of the Texas Revolution. It is now time to unveil the marker. So David and the Glaspys, I think, are going to do it.
Well, if
Thank
you'd
you.
stay up, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, we'll we'll unveil the marker, and if Sugar Glaspy and Betty Glaspy could please come up, and David, if you'd come up also as well with them.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Oh, right. By the way, this is, of course, a photographic facsimile of the marker. The real marker is posted on Highway 34 at Sand Lake.
These are never easy. It doesn't work very well.
You got it. Oh, you got it. There it is.
There it is.
Thank you.
We couldn't have this out on Highway 34 because we'd be plowed under by gravity.
That or the tented blow over, or both. Goodness, after these other comments from these fine people, I really have not much that I can add as a closing statement, other than I guess I have three things to say. One is, and this has kind of been touched on by both Will and David, and that is there are three stages to history. There's the history like today. There's the history you live. There is then the history that you hear firsthand from the next generation, or the history you hear firsthand from the people who lived it. And then there's the history that's written in books. And my charge to everyone here today, especially the young people, is talk to your parents, talk to your grandparents, and find out about the life they lived, because we're talking about a community that was thriving a mere 70 years ago, within someone's lifetime, and now it's basically a memory. And I just urge all of you to remember to go and talk to your parents and your grandparents and find out what their life was like. And even better than that, video record it or something so that other generations can see it in the future. I guess in the 80s, my older brother took my parents and drove them around to video record all of the different houses that they had lived in when they were growing up. And it was a wonderful record on, of course, VHS tape. But they forgot to record the house my parents were living in at that time. And it was, you got to remember these things. So I don't mean to digress away from the importance of today, but just please, kids, talk to your grandparents and your parents. The other thing I want to say is that today would not have been possible without the dedication and interest of the Glaspy family, especially Sugar Glaspy, who has been a longtime member of the Ellis County Historical Commission and really took it upon herself to document this history for all of us to recall. And then the last thing that has also been touched on is in about 10 days, on Thursday, April 3rd, we'll be dedicating the marker for the Ennis Bluebonnet Trails at the Ennis Welcome Center, downtown Ennis. That's another wonderful thing. And that's a kind of a different thing because that is a tradition that is being honored as opposed to distinct from a place. But still, that'll be on April 3rd, so Thursday morning at 10 a.m. So if you all are available to come to that. You'll have to hear me again. I'll get this thing fixed by then. But I urge you all to be able to attend that as well. The only other closing remarks I have is I know that there are some refreshments in the back of the room, and there are some other photos and displays of about Sand Lake over the years that were part of that application. Oh, and I guess one other thing about, I forgot this, I'm sorry kids. When you find out that history, write it down, record it somehow. And if you really are interested, and I hope you are, please apply for a Texas Historical Commission marker for these events. This is basically a family event that the state is recognizing, and also to honor Buckley, which is of course a very important connection back to all of Texas history. But we urge you to all do that. I will now stop talking so you all can visit and enjoy some refreshments. Thank you all for coming.